You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Good morning, good morning. We talk the whole night through. Good morning to you and you and you.
Man, you started off with some really good rhythm there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I lost it a little bit, but I got back on track.
Wow, yeah, that was super cool,
Yeah,
man.
I'm not a drummer, although I've always wanted to be one.
You could have been. You played drums for Christmas?
For Christmas, yeah, for like 2 seconds.
You were like a rock star, man.
Yeah, that was me.
Everybody was like, wow.
Yeah. All I did was hit 4 toms. That was it.
Okay. So we have a really interesting challenge today.
Well, it's brand new.
We've never done this before.
No, never.
It's called the Wikipedia challenge.
According to Desiree, it is.
Yes, that's right. So this says that Jeff,
yeah.
I'm going to randomly select a Wikipedia page, and I'm going to read the first paragraph aloud to you, Chris.
Yes.
Without telling you the subject. And then you have to guess what the article is about based solely on that paragraph.
So the topics that I have to choose from, the category is literally the world.
The world. Everything in Wikipedia.
Under the sun.
Yes.
Everything. So I've narrowed it down to everything written ever about Wikipedia.
Everything that's ever been put in the internet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thanks, Desiree.
Okay.
For narrowing it down for me.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a hint. It's a person.
Oh, good.
Okay. So does it help you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. They were born February 22nd, 1890, and died May 27th, 1949.
Okay.
This person was an American cartoonist, entrepreneur, and amateur anthropologist. Was known for creating a popular newspaper panel series, television show, and radio show, which featured odd facts from around the world.
Wow.
That's the paragraph.
Can you read that again?
Oh. Do you need the dates?
No.
Okay.
You said 1890 to 1946.
1949.
1949.
Well, now you were thinking the wrong person. 1949. This person was an amateur cartoonist, entrepreneur, an American cartoonist, entrepreneur, and amateur anthropologist who was known for creating a newspaper panel series, television show, and radio show which featured odd facts from around the world.
Is it Ripley?
Yes. Robert Ripley.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice.
Good job. From Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah, that's
Did you like Ripley's Believe It or Not?
Of course.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the host used to say, with the pause, he'd say, Ripley's Believe It or Not. That's what he would say. Yeah, so that was really popular in the 80s, right? That was Ripley's Believe It or Not was really popular in the 80s.
Yeah, sure. But he was popular.
No, I meant the show.
Yes.
The TV show.
That TV show? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then have you ever been to a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum? 2 of them,
yeah. Three of them.
Yeah, I have 2. So, yeah.
Okay, so you always wonder who's the weirdo who pays the money to go see all the things.
It's us.
It's us. We're the ones. I read a biography of Robert Ripley.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
really?
I've got it on my shelf. It's one of the better books I've read. Very interesting.
Now, did you
life.
just think of him?
Yeah, just now? Yeah.
Like when you looked it up, you were like, I'm just going to look up Ripley.
Yeah. I was going to look up Barnum and then thought, no, let's go Ripley.
Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm glad I got it.
Yeah, good job, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations. 50,000 points for you.
Wow. Oh, holy Christmas.
Yeah.
I have so many points.
I'm feeling so magnanimous today. I'm just going to 50,000 points for you and for you.
I am so happy I can cry.
And the first listener that grabs it, you can have 50,000 as well.
What?
There you go. I just willy-nilly gave 50,000.
You're going to give mine points?
No, somebody else's.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Just don't take mine.
No, you can have yours.
Because I'm glad I have them.
Mm-hmm. But I loved Ripley. And so very interesting kind of a rags to riches story. Just kind of a guy who never gave up, who had, just outrageous dreams for his life. Found ways to fund it and to make it happen and hustled and then used his wealth to compound his wealth. And he just kept reinvesting, almost went bankrupt several times, I think, go bankrupt at one point, then was outrageously wealthy.
Wow.
In his lifetime. And very, very popular, odd guy. He had really buck teeth and all that kind of stuff.
You'd have to be odd in order to have that fascination with weird facts.
Yeah. But, I mean, so have you ever seen a picture of him?
No. Oh,
right.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had some prominent teeth.
It's a good thing he had money.
Yeah. Yeah. And just really an interesting.
Mercy.
Yeah. Interesting person. And I just was riveted by the book. Like, I think I read it in a day and a half.
Wow.
It was just I don't know why, but I'm always interested in people that can capture the general population's attention.
Yeah.
Like he did. And then capitalize on the fact that he got some momentum and went, because he didn't have the internet back then.
Right.
How do you capture at one point, he was one of the most famous people in the entire world.
Wow.
And how do you, with all of the disadvantages he had in his life, how do you capture the attention of the whole world?
Right.
It's just really, really phenomenal, really neat story. So he wasn't the best human on the planet,
Right,
but
right.
interesting story. So there you go. Well, good job. I wasn't sure you'd get Ripley.
Thank you.
Robert Ripley.
I'm very proud of it.
Good for you. And speaking of believing or not,
Yeah.
today, I don't even know if you're going to believe this story.
Right.
Or not.
That's great.
Right?
Great transition.
Was that a good transition?
Hey, Elijah, believe it or not? Yeah.
Yes. So yesterday we established the fact that Elijah confronts Ahab and says, "You are the troublemaker."
Yeah.
And I got an idea. Why don't you get Jezebel's prophets, the 450 prophets of Baal, the 400 prophets of Asherah, and meet me up on Mount Carmel.
That's where we picked off.
Yeah.
We're left off.
So then in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 20, it says, "So Ahab summoned all the people of Israel and the prophets to Mount Carmel. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, 'How much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is good, God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him.' But the people were completely silent. Then Elijah said to them, 'I am the only prophet of the Lord who's left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Now bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose whichever one they wish and cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood of their altar, but without setting fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood on the fire, or on the altar, but not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the true God.' And all the people agreed. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, 'You go first, for there are many of you. Choose one of the bulls and prepare it and call on the name of your God, but do not set fire to the wood.' So they prepared one of the bulls and placed it on the altar. Then they called in the name of Baal from morning until noontime, shouting, 'O Baal, answer us!' But there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar that they had made. About noontime, Elijah began mocking them. 'You'll have to shout louder,' he scoffed, 'for surely he's a god. Perhaps he's daydreaming, or maybe he's relieving himself, or maybe he's away on a trip, or is asleep and needs to be awakened.' So they shouted louder, and following the normal custom, they cut themselves with knives and swords until the blood gushed out. They raved all afternoon until the time of the evening sacrifice, but still there was no sound, no reply, no response. Then Elijah called to the people, 'Come over here.' They all crowded around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel, and he used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of the Lord. Then he dug a trench around the altar, large enough to hold about 3 gallons. He piled wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, laid the pieces on the wood, and then he said, 'Fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water over the offering and the wood.' After they had done this, he said, 'Do the same thing again.' And when they were finished, he said, 'Now do it a 3rd time.' So they did as he said, and the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench. At the usual time for the offering, the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walked up to the altar and prayed, 'O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. O Lord, answer me. Answer me so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have brought them back to yourself.' And immediately the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell face down on the ground and cried out, 'The Lord, he is God. Yes, the Lord is God.' Then Elijah commanded, 'Seize all the prophets of Baal. Don't let a single one escape.' So the people seized them all, and Elijah took them down to the Kishon Valley and killed them there."
He killed 850 of them.
850 prophets.
And at that time, nobody could really stop him.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you can call down fire from heaven, I'm guessing you can pretty much do what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm guessing also.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, just an unbelievable, believe it or not, kind of a scenario, Ripley's, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. And you know what's so great about this is the symbolism of, like, number one, 3 years earlier, Elijah had predicted no rain, which is attributed to Baal, right?
Yeah.
Baal's the one who's in control of rain, quote unquote, right? So, the Lord God is the one in control of rain, and he's about to. Wait! You're supposed to read the rain thing too. You were supposed to read.
I was supposed to read all the way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me keep going then, because this is exciting. In verse 41, it says, "Then Elijah said to Ahab, 'Go get something to eat and drink, for I hear a mighty rainstorm coming.' So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel and bowed low to the ground and prayed with his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, 'Go and look out toward the sea.' The servant went and looked, and then returned to Elijah and said, 'I didn't see anything.' 7 times Elijah told him to go look, and finally the 7th time his servant told him, 'I saw a little cloud about the size of a man's hand rising from the sea.' Then Elijah shouted, 'Hurry to Ahab and tell him, climb into your chariot and go back home. If you don't hurry, the rain will stop you.' Soon the sky was black with clouds. A heavy wind brought a terrific rainstorm, and Ahab left quickly for Jezreel. Then the Lord gave special strength to Elijah. He tucked his cloak into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to the entrance of Jezreel." There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
It's pretty quick.
So the symbolism is, he's demonstrating that the Lord God is the one who has control over the rain, not Baal. Number 2, I think it's by no accident that he sacrificed the bull. And you had just talked about how bulls was sort of the symbol of
virility and power, and
and of Baal.
Of Baal, yeah.
And so and it wasn't uncommon to offer sacrifice of bull. A bull is a common sacrifice. It wasn't an unusual animal.
Right.
However, the symbolism of the bull being slaughtered and how God consumed the bull.
That's right.
Just like he was consuming all the power of Baal, the perceived power of Baal.
That's right.
Right. So it's just really symbolic. And then the third thing that we can't overlook is the fact that you know, after 3 years of a drought, you and I would probably have no understanding on how precious water would be. Right?
Oh, right. That's right.
And he says, in
this moment, because they'd been in this drought for
3 years.
3 years, yeah.
So he says, take water and drench the wood. And he says they did it so much, they did it 3 times to where it filled the trench, and the trench was 3 gallons. And so just think about the audacity. Just you're calling for water and you're wasting it. And then on top of that, think about this. How dry the wood would be after 3 years of a drought. Right. So, it's almost like, geez, you could almost expect it to spontaneously spark, right? Because of how dry it would be. Right. And he gave Baal that opportunity. But just in case anybody had any doubt, we're going to douse the wood with water so that there is unmistakably no doubt, and that credit has to be given back to God. Because God has done this thing that is just so miraculous. Right. So it's just, I love the details that are placed in here that are so symbolic.
And again, I mentioned yesterday about how rough around the edges he is.
Yeah.
So he's the only person in the entire Bible who makes a potty joke.
Right. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Yeah. Maybe he's relieving himself.
Yeah, exactly. So not only does he give them the opportunity with, highly combustible dry wood and all this stuff, and there's 850 of you, there's only one of me, so you guys go first. And the Bible says they raved
for hours,
all day. A full-blown rave. They're dancing, they're cutting themselves, they're going crazy, and he starts mocking them. Not mocking them. He's mocking their God. Is what he's doing, right? But still, it's so funny.
Hey, surely he's a God. Speak louder. Maybe he's on vacation.
Yeah. Maybe he's just daydreaming.
Yeah, maybe he's sleeping.
Yeah. He needs to be waking. And so it says, so they shouted louder.
Right. Maybe your God's taking a nap. It's so funny.
It's such a funny segment. That whole thing. In the same way I mentioned before, there were 3 miracles mentioned, and then his reputation was so strong that Obadiah was afraid. Well, if I go tell Ahab, you might disappear. God might take you. So, how many more miracles happened in Elijah's life that made Obadiah think, this guy, you just never know what God's going to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing, that God gives you a few things to just establish Elijah's a man with a tremendous amount of spiritual power from God.
Right.
So in this one too, you kind of get this hint that it only mentions like 5 things that he mocks, but they rave all day long.
Right.
So the trash talking had to have been going on all day. It's not like he only said these 4 or 5 things.
Right.
It's that it's letting you know in the same way. It's just letting you know these are some of the things he was doing. And so they just get louder and they get more crazy with their worship, and now they're dancing around, they're raving around the thing. Then they get out knives and swords and start cutting themselves, sacrificing their own blood.
And it said, as was their custom.
Yeah, to try to get this Baal to answer their prayers.
Yeah. And Elijah knows the whole time. He has complete confidence. Otherwise, he wouldn't be mocking. Right. And so he has complete confidence that what's going to happen. And I love how after he does pray that simple prayer, it says immediately the fire came down.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
As soon as he said, God, show them that you're God, boom, it happens immediately. And hey, let's not overlook the fact that Elijah gets superpowers and runs faster than a chariot for, I think it may be hundreds of miles.
It's a long ways.
It's a long ways.
It's not hundreds of miles, but it's miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like hundreds of miles. Oh, I guess it doesn't, does it?
Yeah.
It looks like it's maybe a dozen miles?
Yeah, from Galilee to Jerusalem's only like 90 miles. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this distance here is, we drove it from Mount Carmel over to Galilee in like less than an hour.
Okay, so it's 10 miles or less, probably.
Probably, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's not hundreds of miles.
No,
it's not the United States.
But still, you're right. He outran. He outran a guy in a chariot.
By the way, in a thunderstorm.
Right.
In a raging thunderstorm, because it actually said, what does it say? It says that if you don't leave now, you're going to get caught in the thunderstorm. And it said that, hang on, and he brought a heavy wind and brought a terrific rainstorm.
That's right.
So here's Elijah. He tucks his cloak into his belt, and he starts running. And it says God gave special powers to Elijah, and he's running faster than a chariot in a rainstorm.
Right.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
And by the way, the note on the Life Application Study Bible said that one of the reasons that Elijah could have run to Jezreel is because he wanted perhaps to make sure that the story that was brought back to the city was the right story.
That's right.
Right, and then perhaps another reason was maybe even to give Ahab his last chance to repent.
Right.
Right, to get there before him. And just to say, okay, hey, before you walk in there, and go to Queen Jezebel.
Yeah.
This is you've seen the works of God. And so either way, though, for some reason, Elijah runs back. It doesn't say why, by the way.
No.
It just says he runs there, and then we're about to see Jezebel's reaction tomorrow, right?
That's right.
If we don't read it, we're going to summarize it.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me if that's the reason he ran to Ahab. Hey, give him another chance. It's interesting because he did the exact same thing for all the people before this all happened. He said, hey, you need to choose which God you're going to follow.
Right.
Right. There's something about that as followers of God, it is not unreasonable to, in a loving way, which I believe that this is a loving thing, that God is trying to get the attention of the people of Israel. And in a loving way, he says, hey, you need to make a choice. A lot of people don't deal with things of faith at all. And they feel like by not making they feel like by ignoring it, they're not making a choice. But in reality, you're choosing against God until you choose for God. Right? Jesus said, if you're not for me, you are against me.
It's like whenever you decide not to decide, you're still deciding something.
That's right.
You're deciding not to decide.
Right. And so then he challenges them with their own gods and these prophets. I mean, these ones. The people were pretty indifferent through the whole thing. It's not like they're like, no, our gods are real. It just says the people are silent. Right? That's what it says. So they're like, whatever.
Well, we know it's loving because it's 3 years in the making.
Right.
Right? It's God setting into motion, demonstrating his power, so that when this confrontation happens, they have a chance to say, absolutely,
right,
I choose God. Right?
Yes. But they don't really respond at all. It just says after he challenges them, it says, but if Baal is God, then follow him. If the Lord is God, follow him. but the people were completely silent. It wasn't that they made a choice. They didn't say, oh, no, we like Baal. They didn't really believe Baal either. It was just this kind of agnosticism, I think. And yeah, the prophets do their thing, and Jezebel seems to take care of everybody, and it's kind of a cool thing. It's a cultural thing we do, right? A lot of people go to church culturally, but they haven't really placed their faith in Jesus, whatever. They were completely silent. They're not choosing Baal in this moment. They're just not choosing God. And so then Elijah goes, okay, God has done whatever he can do to get your attention. And God will. The difficult times, the famine, the drought, all this kind of stuff. God's doing what he can do to get their attention. They don't respond. And so then he does this incredible miracle. And it's interesting. They're dancing around, they're shouting, they're screaming, they're doing everything they can do, and their gods are completely silent. And this is the beginning of the people going, oh my goodness, God is God, right? Because, and I've seen this many times, you have too. In our day, in America, there aren't many people who worship bulls, right? That's not what we worship.
Right.
We worship pleasure. We worship our own intellect.
Money.
We worship our own opinions. We worship money and what it can get us, our stuff. We worship our families. We worship,
our kids,
our politics, right? That's what we worship. But it's interesting how often people will get to the end of those things, and when they're really desperate, those things don't answer. They don't answer. I can't tell you how many wealthy people I've told you I've had tell me, I just thought there was going to be more.
Right.
I thought I'd be more satisfied. I feel like I've wasted my life. I ignored my family. I risked everything. I got what I wanted, and it's just leaving me empty.
Well, it's like the quote we did at Christmas from Jim Carrey, the famous actor and comedian. He said, I wish that everybody could become rich and famous and do everything they've ever wanted just so they can discover it's not the answer.
Right.
What a great quote.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, what I was going to say is...
So their gods didn't answer them, is what I was saying.
Yes. This reminds me of... It reminds me of what Jesus said in the New Testament. Because it's interesting, because to your point, there's like an agnosticism there, there's an indifference, and then all of a sudden when the fire comes down, then they say,
hey, whoa.
Then they say, oh, the Lord is God, the Lord is God. And yet, at the same time, it's almost a sad statement that it had to come to this,
right?
That God had to demonstrate himself in such a dramatic, and one of the most dramatic fashions in the whole Bible. Red Sea parting,
right?
Elijah on Mount Carmel. I mean, it's up there, right?
Yeah, right.
It's in the top 5. And so it's almost a sad statement that the people would have to get to that point in order to believe. But you know what Jesus said?
What's that? Jesus
said, you have seen and believed, but blessed is he who does not see and yet still believes.
That's right.
Right? And so, I think that all of us would say, gosh, if Jesus would just appear in my living room, or if he would just make himself known, why doesn't he just do that? Why doesn't he just appear in a dramatic fashion so that all of us can, set the record straight in our lives? But that's not what God has done from the very beginning. God calls us to have faith. God calls us to, basically believe and not see at times.
Right.
Because God is seen in other ways in our lives, right? Would you say that you have the undeniable evidence of God in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you could tell story after story after story.
Yes.
And yet God never has appeared to you physically in a dramatic fashion.
No.
Or rained fire down probably to that degree.
That's right.
Right? So God calls us to, demonstrate our faith. And that's why it's called faith. Because if he appeared in a dramatic fashion, that's not really faith. That's believing something that we know, that we can see. What are you looking up?
I was looking up here on Mount Carmel.
Oh yeah.
There's a old church there, and you look out over across the valley. There's if you look far enough to the east, there's Megiddo, which is Armageddon. That space, Megiddo. There's an Air Force base out in front of you, out in this valley where the river is flowing, the Kidron Valley River. And they have this statue here, and our people can't see it. There's a statue here with Elijah with a sword over his head.
Yeah.
And one of the prophets of Baal.
See if they,
can you see it? I don't know if you can see it there. But
zoom in. Well,
yeah, it's okay. We'll post it.
Okay.
I'll have her post it. But it's just one of those things that you're standing there, and it was such an amazing, oh my goodness, moment.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, this is where Elijah did the thing. And then you come around the corner and there's this giant statue. And the statue they decided to have of Elijah is a sword over his head.
Wow.
And there's something to be said when you finally do decide to make the turn back to God. The people go, okay, you're right, God's God. He proved himself in this moment. Elijah purged the nation of Israel of their prophets. He got rid of all of the representation of that evil thing. And there is something about that, right? This idea of saying, okay, I've turned the corner. I've decided God is my God, so I'm going to eliminate everything that represents my old gods. And he didn't go halfway. It's one of the things I love about Elijah, because even Joshua and the people, David and Solomon, they made peace with the Phoenicians rather than wiping them out. That was all still the promised land. And they made peace with them. And so then all of a sudden Ahab marries one of them, and she brings the people back to the most committed version of their religion following Baal. She's funding 850 prophets. And when the people finally realize God is God, Elijah said, well, the job's not done. Just because God did this miracle, the job's not done. And he had to do. God didn't wipe them out. God sent Elijah to wipe them out.
Yeah.
Right? And so there was still work to do to decide we are getting rid of every vestige of this former religion. And it took a lot of courage there. And so when I saw that a statue, I think that was the first time I've ever really thought about that because there's a plaque there, and it's got a Bible verses where he wiped them all out. And I remember thinking the great miracle was fire from heaven, but God didn't wipe out the prophets.
Right.
God said, no, you have to wipe out the prophets.
Right.
And you're the one that has to purchase. And so God does miracles in our life, and then still, where he rescues us and he brings us to faith in him, but he also expects us to do the work of getting rid of the things that we used to worship.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, that is definitely our time. And so hopefully we will see you next time on The Bible Guys.